In this video guys, I'm going to show you some things that I know you've never seen before. I can guarantee you it's going to be educational, it's going to be entertaining, and it might even blow your mind. This vehicle is riddled with some nasty rust. It's gone right the way through the bodywork and created some really bad damage. It's Friday as I'm recording this, and on Monday I've got a guy coming all the way from Scotland to fetch it, and I've told him it's pretty mint. Just to make the situation 10 times harder, I've set a criteria for you guys. It's got to be as DIY as possible, no welding involved, no special spraying equipment, and it's got to be affordable and on a budget. I'm going to literally be a DIYer. I'm going to have to struggle with the tools I've got, I'm going to have to be inventive, I'm going to have to bend the rules slightly, and I'm going to have to use whatever I can get over the counter. So it's Friday afternoon and I need to get this thing washed off. We need to have a look at what we're dealing with. As I was cleaning it, I started to go around it and it was coming up alright in areas, and I thought, you know what, this thing ain't that bad. I'll have this thing sorted out for Monday afternoon, no problem. But once I got it in the unit and dried it off and I started having a look round, I started to realise I've got involved here with something that's going to be really challenging. The more I poked and prodded around, the more my heart sank, and I thought, what on earth am I going to do with this? The bits that had started off as small bits were becoming bigger bits. The damage I already knew about was 10 times worse than what I even thought. And this whole area looked like it was just glued together with what looked like bathroom sealant. So I thought to myself, stop whinging, let's just crack on. Let's whip these stickers off. They'll come straight off. They've probably been on the van about 15 years and this bit will be easy. It turns out it was actually 2 layers of stickers and they put up the fight of their life. This whole lower quarter panel and sill area was just staring at me, haunting me, so I thought let's start somewhere a bit more straightforward. So as the thumbnail suggests, I'm going to show you 3 methods of how to fix rust. This is method 1. I'm attaching a sandpaper disc to a drill and I'm going to grind off, hopefully, all of the rust that's present on this front wing. If you're lucky, once you've sanded it down, the rust will be removed, there'll be no holes, no deterioration from behind the panel as well as the front, and hopefully you can get it down to bare metal. Unfortunately, this often isn't the case. At this point, my battery died on my drill, so I had to whip out this Milwaukee. Don't worry, you can carry on using the drill for this bit, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. What I'm trying to look for with these areas is we're just going to try and get as much of that rust off as possible. You could even at this point cut into the metal, completely cut the square out or whatever shape it needs to be where the rust is. But as I was looking at this rear quarter, I was starting to realise that I'm going to have to do something way more inventive to try and get this job done. This will become more clear in method 3 further in the video. For now though, we need to address these holes. This is where method 2 comes in, and we're going to use expanding foam. This might seem a crazy idea, but what we need to do is we need to create a semi-solid base so that we can do the next stages of our repair. To keep this DIY, we obviously can't use a welding machine because we haven't got one, because you guys most likely haven't got one. So we're going to have to do something different with regards to filling the holes and then making sure that we can apply some kind of material on top of where the hole is. Don't worry if you apply too much foam, so did I. It's hard to judge. I just whipped it off with a piece of plastic filler spreader. Once it had dried, I used a saw and I just chopped it off. I can't remember the exact drying times, it will depend on the temperature and the product that you're using, but just give it a poke with your finger and maybe try and cut it a little bit. If it's still a bit tacky on the inside like this one was, you've probably done it too early. Once it had fully cured, I got the angle grinder out, because you might have one of those, and I just did exactly the same process as on the other side. I just cleaned as much of that metal up as I possibly could. As with a lot of repairs, particularly rust, there's got to be some kind of compromise as to how far you go with it. I went this far with it. I know there's still rust exposed in a couple of places, Ideally we'd probably be cutting a section out, but I was pushed for time. It's a DIY video and I want to demonstrate the most straightforward ways of doing things. At this stage now I was just sanding down any of the excess foam and any little nibs that had ended up on the metal. Watch you don't cut yourself with your fingers as you're rubbing your hand across, because you don't want rust cutting into your fingers. I've been recently using some of this stuff and I actually think it's pretty good. I know it's not going to be a miracle cure, but we're just trying to do everything in our power to try and hold back that rust for as long as possible. For the sake of what this stuff costs and how easy it is to use and how quickly it works, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer trying to put some kind of rust inhibitor on the surface. I decided at this stage that it might be worthwhile using some fiberglass filler. If you've not got fiberglass filler, or you don't want to buy fiberglass filler because it's going to add cost onto the repair, then you can just use normal filler, so you can skip this stage and go straight to the next stage. But just for demonstration purposes, I've ended up using some of this filler. It's got some fiberglass mixed in with it. It's not proper fiberglass, it's more of a putty that's got probably half fiberglass, half filler. It's a 2-part, 2-pack, 2-component product, so I am mixing a hardener with the filler. So I'm just going to apply some of that filler to the hole. I'm not looking for perfection here, I'm just going to slap it on because we're going to be sanding it back anyway. And I know it might look a bit strange using expanding foam, but it's actually a really good material to do a filler over. This is what it looks like when the rust inhibitor is taking action on the rust, which swiftly brings me over to method 3. Now I know this is where it gets a bit funky, and if you're a professional bodywork tech, you're going to be going, what the hell are you doing? But for those that are watching, hear me out. I went onto a popular online auction site and I ordered a sheet of ABS plastic. ABS plastic is what a lot of car bumpers and car parts are made out of, so I thought, well, you know what, it's compatible with cars. This stuff was only 2 or 3 millimeters thick, so it was easy to cut. I cut it into the exact shape what I measured. It was at this point I was desperate to blast the area off with an airline, but because we've got no compressor, because you guys are DIY, you might have a compressor, I just used a hoover instead. I offered the ABS up to the panel and I made some slight adjustments to the size. I rounded off a couple of these corners. This was just so it sit nice and snugly, and we're going to have to blend this in with the panel. I gave the whole of the back panel a whiz over with the die grinder. You can do this with sandpaper or the drill. This was just so that there's a good key when we do the next stage. This stuff I'm about to use next is basically automotive glue. It's called Tiger Seal in the trade. It's a bit like a No More Nails type product. It's very sticky, and once it's set, it's normally pretty rock hard. Next stage was to basically stick the ABS panel onto the rear quarter of the van. Try not to get this stuff all over your fingers, guys, like I did, because it doesn't like coming off your hands. You perhaps should wear gloves. In fact, just a quick warning to everybody, make sure you wear the right PPE when you're doing things like this. This stuff takes a few hours to dry, so we're going to have to go around the van and address some other little bits while we wait. While that was drying, I applied a bit more of the fiberglass putty to the other side of the van where there was the other hole. Like I said before, don't be too finicky about it, just slap it on, we're going to be sanding it back anyway. After about an hour or so, it was ready for sanding. I got a block and I just sanded it down. I made it nice and smooth, nice and flat. It's sanded down pretty well. Obviously it's quite dusty, so wear a mask. If you are doing this method, make sure, as I always say, there's no shiny bits. There should only be shiny bits at the end of the job. When we're prepping up, all the bits that you want to paint need to be dulled down and they need to be scotched or sanded back, ready for the paint application. I was out again with my trusty hoover because, as mentioned before, we've got no compressor to blast off and we need to keep all the areas as clean as possible. The next stage is to use some normal body filler. Again, this is a 2-pack, 2-part component product. So there is a filler and a hardener, also known as an activator. Here's me using way too much activator. It's not recommended to use that much, you probably need half or maybe less of that. I just went around the edges of the ABS sheet. We need to blend this in as best we can because we want it to look like there's not a sheet there. I carefully applied some filler around all the edges, and hopefully once that's sanded back it will start to blend in. The same thing was done on the sill. Again, don't be too finicky about it, let's just get some product on, we're going to sand it back anyway. I did exactly the same thing to the other sill. That's enough, that'll do. A little bit of that. After about an hour of waiting, I did the tap the finger test, which means absolutely nothing, and it was ready for sanding back. So it was looking nice and smooth. In fact, it was too smooth, because if you notice on all cars, most cars lower down, there's a textured underseal line that goes right across the car. Normally we'd use some special product and we'd have to use a special gun and apply a coating all across the bottom, but we can't do that, so I've had to be inventive and I've come up with a trick that you've probably never seen before. On this occasion, for this method, what I've invented, I use some dolphin glaze putty, which stays quite tacky for a short period of time, and I basically just tapped it with my fingers, and what happens is it starts to form this textured finish. This is exactly what we want. Obviously we haven't got special tools, we haven't got the time, we haven't got the materials or the equipment to do it properly, so I've invented a little sneaky way of doing it, and I think it worked really well. I whipped the masking tape off and just smudged that line where it just overspilled a little bit, and that made quite a nice little clean line. A quick scan round to see what we've done. There I've blended the edges of the ABS sheet, that looks pretty good. If I could be too critical of myself, I probably put a bit too much texture on that area, it probably could have been a bit finer. Front wing was rust treated and I just added a little bit of filler over it because the drill can be quite aggressive. I decided to take these panels off and any of the clips, what was remaining. I gave it a quick clean down with some APC and a wipe. This door edge was annoying me, so I just got some pliers and pulled it out to take your eye off it a bit. Nice. Anywhere that you're intending to paint, anywhere that you're intending to take the lacquer to, you need to give that a good scotch down or a fine sandpaper down, otherwise the paint won't stick. Masking up stages are next because we are about to start doing the spray applications. Make sure you cover as much of your vehicle as possible because we don't want any overspray going everywhere, and we're going to do a fair amount of painting, so it is going to make a fair amount of overspray. This is the first stage of masking. We're just going to give it a panel wipe. I've just cut round the areas that we're going to prime. It saves masking up twice. I like to do it this way because it saves materials, it saves time. Make sure you panel wipe everywhere down thoroughly because otherwise things could react and you could have problems down the line with your paint. Etch primer for this stage just to cover up any of them exposed metal areas. I like the Pro XL one, you use whatever you can get hold of or whatever one you like. Same with this side, I just masked it up. Little bit of etch primer where there was a couple of bits of metal showing. Next I was using a normal primer, this is Pro XL Ultra Build. Again, use whatever you've got or whatever you enjoy using, that's up to you. As always, the first coat should be a light coat. Just go over there nice and steady. Go over everywhere that you've put filler, everywhere that there's etch primer. As you can see, we've masked off the wing just a section. We don't want the primer going everywhere on the wing, creating more of a paint area. I did 2 coats of that primer and then I left it for about an hour. Sanded it down with some 800, just making it nice and smooth and blending any areas in that we've gone up to. It's especially important when you've done an edge with the masking tape, such as on the wing. We need that blended in. This stage is the final stages of masking and panel wiping. Okay, so I've just changed over to my chest mount camera so that you can see both my hands, and I've changed the vision to 0.6 on the camera, so it's made it a little bit fishbowly. So just to zoom out so you can see everything. So I've just had some paint mixed up by Paint Gear to match the van with the colour code that I provided them, so hopefully that should match all right. Sometimes whites can be a bit tricky, but let's give it a go. So when you're painting, the first coat needs to be a light coat. We don't want to be blasting it on heavy because that's asking for trouble. We're not looking for full coverage on the first coat, that's just not really possible, and if it is, then perhaps you're applying too much in one go. Most of the time I apply 3 coats of base coat, which is the colour coat. No more really, unless it's a weird colour that required it. And that's sort of always the way I've done it. So one can, there's still a bit left, has done all that bottom bit, bottom of the door, sill, blow in there, so not fully painted, just sort of a blow in there, a little tiny bit on the bonnet, and then a blowing down there. That's with one can, so that's not too bad. So we're on to the lacquering stage, and there's 2 different sized cans of the one that I like to use. Obviously for something like this, that'd cover it easy with some other bits. You'll have loads left off that. I'm going to be using this one because there's loads of other bits on the car what I'm painting at the same time. This stage is sort of the final stage of the spray applications. This is the clear coat, this is the lacquer, this is the varnish, whatever you call it. We call it clear coat in the UK most of the time, and this is what gives it its shiny, durable, protective finishing layer. Ideally we are applying 2 coats of this particular product. First coat is a bit of a tack coat, a light coat, and then we're doing 1 full wet coat, and that should be enough. It has been about an hour. I've gone and had a coffee, something to eat, and came back to have a look how the paintwork's doing, and I'm pretty happy with that. Is it safe to touch? Yep, nice and glossy. Once the paint application has dried and you're sort of happy that you don't need to apply any more layers to it, then it's time to remove all the masking tape and all the sheeting. Just be conscious at this point that the paint might be a little bit tacky and not fully hardened at this point, and it's really easily damaged. So softly approach, just go nice and steady, nice and methodical. I left everything overnight, and when I came in the next day I decided to give the rest of the van a good polish because I wanted it to look presentable now that we'd done the paintwork. I was overall really happy with how it looked. I was happy with the finish, I was happy with the colour match. I just decided to do some little finishing touches, one of them being just blacking up this lower area of the sill that we repaired. It didn't really need doing as such, but I just thought it looked a little bit more uniform and a bit more factory if it was black down that bit. The next stage of the process was to put all the plastic trims back on. I replaced a couple of the clips. They always seem to break when you take these things off, they're very brittle. And I was really interested at this point to see exactly what that repair, especially where I did the ABS sheet, does it blend in? Can you see the edge? Will people notice that I've stuck a piece of plastic over that area? First impressions were positive. The trim panel went back on alright, it all lined up alright, so I was pretty confident. I took it outside and I'm pretty happy with that, guys. I am pretty happy with it. I know it's not perfect, but it looks a damn sight better than what it did. In fact, it was only when I look back at the clips you start to realise exactly how bad it did look. And we've done this all with DIY tools, nothing really expensive or fancy. Look at the state of it before and look at it after. you've got to agree, the difference is dramatic. That's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please comment, like, hit share, hit subscribe. It helps the channel out. I'll see you in the next one.